According to the U.S. Department of the Treasury, the national debt broke records Friday when the total climbed over $19 trillion.
That's a $56,000 burden for each of us.
President Obama is set to unveil a $4 trillion budget for 2016.
Wisconsin U.S. Senator Ron Johnson says that we could add $126 trillion in new debt over the next 30 years.
You're looking at an unemployment rate around 23%.
I have to feed my family, and I think a lot of people around the United States feel the same way.
And right now I live in a country where the government does whatever it wants to do.
You don't hear too many elected officials talking about it because if they actually describe that harsh reality, we have to do something about it, and that's not real popular.
The Texas Nationalist Movement is in the middle of a cross-state campaign tonight to push for independence, and
they believe Texas could make it on its own.
Texans are tired of answering to bureaucrats in D.C. that they didn't elect.
They want to take Texas back.
We'd be the 46th largest country in the world, the 17th leading oil producer, the 15th largest economy. We've got our own Air Force. They build F-16s in Fort Worth. Wonder what Sam Houston would think.
Independence. I like that.
These folks think Texas' sunniest days are ahead.
What I want to ensure is that all of our monuments, a testimony to the history of the Texas Republic, continues to stand.
It was the most egregious violation of our religious freedom in my lifetime, and we can never let it happen again.
Texas is the top crude oil and natural gas producing state in the nation. In 2020, Texas accounted for 43% of the nation's crude oil production and 26% of its marketed natural gas production. That's good.
Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution states that all political power is inherent in the people. And it's time that we show the political establishment how powerful we can be. And good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you so much to the Texas Nationalist Movement's virtual town hall for the Texas governor's race. The candidates tonight that are going to be with us, of course, you saw right there on the intro, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, Don Huffines, and Chad Prather. I'd like to go ahead and just lay out a little bit about what to expect tonight. And let me go ahead and get this out of the way before we even start. There was an invitation extended to Governor Greg Abbott to attend back in August, and he refused. He turned it down. So for those of you that are wondering where the governor is, he said no. So take that as you will. That being said, my name is Daniel Miller. I'm president of the Texas Nationalist Movement, and it is my extreme pleasure to be able to moderate and host tonight's virtual town hall, including the candidates that were mentioned before. As we get through this political season, and specifically with the governor's race, there are many issues that are going to be covered in other town halls, that are going to be covered in speeches, forums, and debates. But oftentimes, many of the issues that are central and core to the supporters of the TNM and those people that are really following our mission, those issues are left to the wayside. So tonight, the gentlemen here have graciously accepted the invitation to participate in the virtual town hall and be with us here tonight to answer questions that were submitted by all of our supporters. We had put out the call, and we've been inundated. So we've been able to cluster a lot of the questions into specific categories, and we've actually got some that are going to be there at the tail end. So what I'm going to do is right now, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel tonight. Let's go ahead and bring on Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, Don Huffines, and Chad Prather. Hello, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good to be with you.
Well, super. Well, we're going to get started with opening statements from each of these candidates, and we're going to begin tonight with the statements from Colonel West.
Well, pleasure, and thank you so much, Daniel, for having me, and thank you to the Texas Nationalist Movement for having this virtual town hall. Again, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, and I'd like to just say welcome into our home here in the Eastern Hills of Garland, Texas. First and foremost, I just want to say to all the Marines that are out there watching this virtual town hall, happy birthday to the greatest fighting force that the world has ever known. 246 years of service to our great nation, the United States Marine Corps. And then also to all of our veterans that are out there, as we say in the military, all gave some, but some gave all. And to every veteran that is out there, our oath that we took to support and defend the Constitution has no statute of limitations. So happy Veterans Day to you all. And I think that's the thing that we want to really discuss and get into. The commitment that I took to the United States of America and the Constitution back on 31 July 1982. And when I see what is happening in the United States of America right now, it just takes me right back to the grievances that Thomas Jefferson listed, the usurpations of an onerous, intrusive government. And that's exactly what we see happening now. And Thomas Jefferson wrote that free and independent states created these United States of America. And then John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison codified the fact that our states are sovereign, our states are important, our states are the foundation of this constitutional republic. And that's why the very last amendment in the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, is that amendment that says all of the powers not delegated or relegated to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people. So I think that if we have strong leadership in Austin, Texas, in every governor's mansion in the United States of America that understands that relationship, that system of federalism between the states and the federal government, that the Constitution of the United States of America is a restraining document on the powers of the federal government, then we will make sure the future and the legacy of Texas and the United States of America is secured. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Colonel. And next up, we're going to go ahead and have State Senator, former State Senator, but always a senator in my book, Don Huffines.
Thank you, and it's great to be here. Hello, Patriots. I'm Don Huffines, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to be your next governor, and I'm planning on winning. I'm a fifth-generation Texan. I was born in Dallas and grew up in the Metroplex. I'm the father of 5 adult homeschoolers. They're all adults. I'm a grandfather 4 times over in the last 18 months, and I've got a beautiful, perfect wife, Mary Catherine, of 34 years. I'm a lifelong conservative activist. I fought for our Republican Party for many years, our party platform for over 2 decades. I don't need a new job. I'm doing this job because the job's simply not getting done. Well, my opponent, Greg Abbott's 30 years a career politician. He's never signed a paycheck in his life. I'm a businessman. As a matter of fact, according to the Secretary of the Senate, I'm the only elected office holder in the history of the state of Texas down in Austin that never took any money from the government. No pay, no pension, no health care, no per diem, no travel vouchers, no reimbursements, nothing. And I'm going to do the same thing as your governor because I work for the people. I don't ever work for the government. I'm working with you and for you. I don't need a job. The job's simply not getting done. Let me ask you, is the border secure? Are your property taxes going down? Do you have confidence your votes aren't being stolen? And the answer is no. And that's because of the lack of leadership in Austin. I've got a good, comprehensive plan to secure that border. And I'm never asking permission from the federal government to do so. I've got a plan to phase out your property taxes over an 8-year period. We're going to keep the local governments fully funded. You're going to get to vote on it because it's a constitutional amendment, and we're never having an income tax in Texas. I've got a plan to get you confidence in your elections because it's the foundation of our constitutional republic. I'm creating a new law enforcement division that's going to put people in jail. And I'm going to make sure we have a forensic audit of our elections. I need you to join me in this journey to save Texas, and we can save the United States of America. I'm going to prove not only to the United States what it means for Texas to be sovereign, I'm going to prove it to the whole world. I look forward to answering your questions.
All right. Hey, thank you so much, Don. And now let's hear from Chad.
I like that little smirk you gave right there, Daniel.
You like that?
Yeah. I read a lot into that smirk. Thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate the Texas Nationalist Movement. I appreciate the fight that you've been in for a long time. And I consider you a friend. I'm thankful for the time that we have spent together. And I'm thankful for the folks that represent Texas National Movement who are faithful, who come out at these various county meetings and these various events, and they have their petitions, and they're always faithful to wear their shirts, and they're passionate about what they believe in. And the thing that they believe in more than anything else is Texas. And as I've said many, many times, Texas is a spirit. It's way more than a border or a geography or a zip code. It's a spirit that is caught. It's not taught. People either get it or they don't. I was fortunate enough 21 years ago to catch the spirit of Texas. I think it's far more contagious than anything that we're dealing with now in a so-called pandemic. Once you catch it, you don't want to get rid of it, and you're more than eager to give it to other people. Man, at the end of the day, this process is a hard process. It's an exhausting process, but it's a worthwhile process. It's a process that causes folks to want to fight for this great spirit. And right now, I truly do not believe that the spirit of Texas is being represented. I've crisscrossed this state, and I've told people that Texas is not the Texas that most Texans think it is anymore. I've often characterized Texas as having a humble arrogance, that walking tall, everything is bigger in Texas, that head held high, that chest stuck out, that shoulder to the plow, we don't stop until we finish the job. It is powered not by the population centers. I like to call some of our big cities blueberries in the bowl of chili, but by those people that are not represented out there, the counties that you don't know the name of, the folks who don't have a hotel there beyond maybe a Days Inn or a Dewdrop Inn, but they're proud Texans and they love this state and they matter just as much as Dallas or San Antonio or Houston. And so last year, when I saw the liberties of Texans being trampled on, our constitutional rights and our freedoms being walked on and disregarded as though they were nothing, I knew that I had to do something. It became a conviction of mine. It became something that I had to lay all things aside. And I became a reluctant candidate, someone who didn't necessarily want to pursue politics, but I knew that the spirit of Texas was worth the fight. It was worth the sacrifice. And so I pray that the people of Texas will listen and that they'll hear. And they'll know that right now they're not being served. In fact, they're being underserved and they're being disregarded in many ways. They're being disenfranchised. And the thing which has made us great, that great legacy, that great liberty, that great history, that great future that we believe in as Texans is being sacrificed and jeopardized. And so I'm thankful
to be part of this.
I'm thankful to run alongside these patriots. And I'm thankful for you, Texas. Without Texas, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I believe that God has truly blessed us and wants to in the days ahead. But it's only to the degree that we're willing to move forward.
Well, super. And hey, thank you, Chad, for that. And by the way, that was not a smirk. That was the level of excitement that I'm seeing reflected in the people that are participating in chat and comments right now. Guys, I cannot communicate to you how just absolutely over the moon people are with what you guys are saying and are excited to hear from you. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and get started with the questions. And we're going to go this first one. We're going to start with you, Colonel West. Then we're going to go to Don. We're going to go to Chad. So here it is. For 20 years, the border and immigration combined have been the #1 concern for Texas voters. Yet, despite securing the border being a perennial campaign promise from politicians, the border issue is worse now than it has ever been. Additionally, any attempts on the state or local level to take actions to mitigate the impact of the border crisis have been met with federal threats of criminal charges and lawsuits. All of you have, at some point to now, given detailed plans on how you intend to use state action to secure the border. Can you take a moment and summarize your plans for the border and let the people that are participating tonight know how you intend to deal with the federal government's near certain attempts to stop your plans, starting with Colonel West?
Well, great question. And first and foremost, 30 years ago, I was deployed in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm to fix and support the borders of Kuwait. And so now I see myself living here in Texas, and we have a wide open border. The bottom line is this: if you have a federal government which has broken this contract, this agreement is guaranteed. I think I'm back now. But if you have a federal government that broke its contract and this agreement to guarantee that we would be protected from invasion, that's what Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution says, they have abdicated their constitutional duty and responsibility. Therefore, it is up to us as sovereign states to be able to do that. And that's what Article 1, Section 10, Clause number 3 says. So I think that you should always be preparing for the worst case scenario, which is something that we have not done here in Texas. We sit back and we believe that if we have a Republican president sitting in the White House, things will be better. But we still have a problem with illegal immigration. But then when we have the progressive socialists that are there in the Oval Office, we see now what has happened. We should have been better prepared for the fact that they have implemented an open border strategy and a planned ideological agenda, unconstitutional by executive order. And we have the resources. We have the Texas the Texas Military Department, 26,000 troops. A mission analysis that I did with some others. If we put 5,000 to 7,000 down there, we can block those infiltrations routes. We can interdict it. We need to empower our constitutional law enforcement officers, which are our sheriffs, to be able to arrest and detain, not for trespassing, but for people coming illegally and deport them. We need to, without a doubt, take away the ability for these non-governmental organizations to be operating in Texas and being the travel agencies for illegal immigration. We've got to stop the human and sex trafficking that we see happening. We've got to stop the drug trafficking. We have to stop this public safety crisis. But without a doubt, the center of gravity is to go after the cartels, their money, freeze their assets, seize those assets, and use those assets that we take for our own border security fund. So we have got to be serious about our border, understand that we don't want to look to the federal government if they have abdicated their responsibility. We as a sovereign state can do it ourselves.
Okay, thank you, Colonel West. And same question to you, Don. Let's talk border.
Oh, thank you. Well, I've had this up on my website since I announced in May. And the first thing I'm going to do is finish Trump's wall. I'm going to call it a Texas wall. We're going to build it for hundreds of miles, and we're going to spend the billions of dollars necessary to get it completed. Let me say something about this, about the border. I've been there 3 times and since May. I was on the committee in Austin in the Senate for border security. I've flown in the Black Hawk helicopters and have been up and down the river in the gunship. Let me set the table real quick for you how serious this is. Border Patrol is telling me that 1.5 million to 2 million illegals are going to flood into Texas unapprehended in a 12-month period. They've captured illegals since the beginning of the year from 147 different countries. Of course, they're all smuggled in by the most dangerous criminal organizations on earth, the Mexican cartels. I'm going to use Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution, which clearly gives the states the authority to stop an invasion. This is definitely an invasion. The federal government's never going to secure that border. The only chance we have is with a courageous governor of Texas. And that's why this election is the most important election, the primary election for Republican governor of Texas in the country. And I'm going to use the entire Texas military, our National Guard. There's over 20,000 of them. We're going to secure the river. And we're going to immediately deport anyone that gets across that river to the other side. I'll solicit support from other states if needed. There's 25 crossings over that river. We're going to secure every bridge coming on that river, and this is strategic. This is to make sure we're going to stop all inbound commercial traffic from Mexico. And this is going to make sure Mexico feels the economic pain until they secure their side of the river and take it back from the cartels. Let me point out something else. Every road that goes to those bridges is a state road paid for by Texas taxpayers and maintained by Texas taxpayers. We've got all the authority we want to pull those roads up and do whatever we need to do to stop that commercial traffic to make sure Mexico secures their side of the river. It's very doable. I'm going to get done in 30 days. What no one's ever been able to do is actually secure the border because I'm the actual Republican that's actually going to do something. And this is going to make a difference. We're going to get it done once and for all. It's my #1 priority for the state of Texas.
Super. Thank you so much, Don.
You're welcome.
And over to you, Chad. Let's talk about the border.
Likewise, I've been to the border numerous times, and when I go to Valverde County, which of course is Del Rio, every time you turn on the television, you're seeing images from Del Rio. You saw the 13,000 to 23,000 Haitians that were under International Bridge. You know that space between Del Rio and Eagle Pass. You know how many are coming across Del Rio, which represents 120 miles of border space, has apprehended at least 84 nationalities. There's not 84 nationalities south of our border. These people are not coming from Finland and France. We know the detriment that's there. That 120-mile space across the river of the Rio Grande, as well as the lake that is there, Amistad. Let me tell you that the city of Acuna, the cartel that's there, they are accumulating $25 million a week in human trafficking, organ harvesting, sex trafficking, child trafficking, as well as fentanyl, opioid, cocaine. We know what's coming across that border. We're seeing it. We have literally seen people who have taken an oath to defend this state and enforce the law, helping people out of the river into this state and into the interior of this country. I have met with Joe Frank Martinez, the sheriff there in Del Rio, for hours, and he told me, he's a Democrat, by the way, he told me that the last administration, they had this under control. This administration, which he supported in an election, does not. What we've got to do is we've got to go back to a Trump administration way of doing things. We have got to put sanctions on Mexico. We've got to put people on that border, law enforcement who are willing to do their jobs and enforce the laws that are on the books. We've got to do those things and not only have a physical barrier, which is a wall that we can build in the geographical places which are possible, but we have to have a human wall. We have to empower the people of Texas. Let's face it, right now more than ever, borders are important, not just state borders, but our bodies' borders. We're seeing with these vaccine mandates, people do not want to be violated. Their lands are being violated, their properties are being violated, and we need to put people there. Not only law enforcement, we need to go back to an old constitutional rule and a word, a vocabulary that people feign shock and horror at, and that's the word militia. We have to empower people to defend their properties. If they can defend their homes, they can defend their lands. And people don't like that, but let's face it. Washington, D.C. has a target on the back of Texas. They will use their federal powers to make sure that we fail because they want us to become another New York, California, Illinois, Oregon, or Washington. Texas is the last bastion of freedom, and ultimately it's up to the people to make sure that Texas stays safe and our border stays secure. The people of Texas need to put their hands up and say, no more, absolutely not. You're not coming across. This is a war. This is invasion. We are under attack, and we can quote constitutional clauses, articles, and sections, all that we want. But at the end of the day, they have to be enforced, and that has to happen by people.
Super. Thank you, Chad. Okay, let's move right along. The next cluster of questions centered around the issue of monument protection. And so let me just get down to it. And of course, this is first going to go to you, Don. So here it is. During the wave of madness that saw historical monuments and markers defaced, removed, or destroyed, monument protection was listed as a legislative priority of the Republican Party of Texas at the last convention, yet was largely ignored by the governor, lieutenant governor, and legislature during the session. It has also been a priority of the Texas Nationalist Movement since its inception, specifically the Alamo and the attempts to reimagine it. What actions would you take as governor to ensure that the revisionists don't win and our monuments, memorials, and markers are protected?
Well, of course, this should be, and it is, a legislative priority of the Republican Party. But this is indicative. The fact that it didn't get passed is indicative of what happens when you have poor leadership of our governor. I want everyone to understand that the governor of Texas can get almost any bill done he wants, anytime he wants. And all this angst about legislation we don't get done is because Greg Abbott doesn't want it done. It's as simple as that. Of course, in the Huffines administration, I'm going to get legislation done to protect our monuments. This is a communist plot. Typical communist strategy is to destroy our history. They're going to destroy our history, and they already have, and they're going to replace it with new history. It's all Marxist philosophy. So, of course, in the Huffines administration, I'm going to make sure that we're going to get a bill done as soon as we can to protect all of our monuments. And of course, the Alamo is, every time I go to the Alamo, let me tell you, Dan, I have to take a box of Kleenexes. It just touches my heart, and it should touch every Texan's heart. It's a shrine of liberty. And it's not just Texans. The Alamo is respected worldwide. This is a unique monument to liberty, to freedom. Because the main reason I pointed that out is that most of the men that died in the Alamo, they were not soldiers. These were civilians. And they left their families and their jobs and to go to almost certain death for liberty. And I can tell you, it's a great testimony to the Texas sovereignty, because their sacrifice and created the Republic of Texas.
Thank you, Don. All right, Chad, same question. Alamo Monument Protection.
You know, we have a great history. And because we have a great history, there's my dog over there. Because we have a great history, we have a great identity. And that identity gives us a great legacy. Because we know where we came from, we know where we're going. You know, we all have loved ones in our family, people that have done great things, people that we consider personal heroes, because not only were they family, but they were good men or women. Anybody that would trample on their graves, you know, that would be an act of violence against us, and we would take action. If you read the history of the Alamo, the history of Texas, and you know that history won its independence, became a republic, became an independent nation, and never mustered more than 1,000 fighting men. These were sacred souls. These were sacred people. These were people who came from all over the world, all over the nation, who died at the Alamo. And if you neglect your history, then you neglect your identity. So to the degree that we would fight for those that we knew personally, whether it be a grandfather or even a father, and so on and so forth, to that degree, we have to protect these monuments. We have got to make them sacred places. If you go to the Alamo, they ask you when you walk through the doors to remove your hat. That is a sacred act. It honors those who gave their lives. To that degree, we believe almost with religious fervor that this is not something that we cave to the progressive, liberal, woke ideologies which have become policies these days. But we've learned to interpret men and women according to the times in which they live, and we honor their sacred sacrifice, and we make sure that it happens until time ever after, so that our posterity can honor it as well. It's up to us to determine how this is defended and how it's passed on. And there is no legislation strong enough that would say, remember the Alamo until not only our dying breath, but to that of generations to come.
Super. Thank you, Chad. Okay, and we're back to Colonel West.
Well, I will tell you, having been born and raised in Georgia and being a graduate of the University of Tennessee, where we have a very interesting nickname, not just for the University of Tennessee, but for the entire state of Tennessee, we're the volunteers, and we're the volunteer state. And when you go to the Alamo, you go to the cenotaph, you will see the names of 5 Georgians who came here. As a matter of fact, the Liberty or Death flag of Texas was done by a little girl from Macon, Georgia, that was brought here by the Georgia Volunteers. And of course, you know that Tennessee sent 38 to stand there on those ramparts with the 26-year-old William Barrett Travis when he drew that line in the sand. And the last person that history teaches us to lose his life at the Alamo was also a former member of the United States House of Representatives, such as myself, who once said after his congressional reelection, "May you all go to hell, I'm going to Texas." The Alamo is very important, very near and dear to my heart. And that's why Lee Spencer White of the Descendants of the Alamo Association called upon me when I was the chairman to make sure that I stood side by side, provided written testimony, video testimony, made phone calls, and made sure that the Texas Historical Society and Foundation did not agree with the plan of George P. Bush, the land commissioner, to move the cenotaph off of the battlefield of the Alamo over near that hotel. And I will continue to stand up for the monuments and memorials, because as George Santayana once said, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And this past June, you had 3 Texans who wrote a book called Forgetting the Alamo, The Rise and Fall of an American Myth. If we don't stand up against this council culture, we don't stand up against this culture of Marxism, they will revise, they will destroy, they will eliminate Texas history, which is history that is so important for these United States of America. And being a history buff myself, I will tell you that I will never allow any monument or memorial, such as the Alamo, Civil War, World War I, World War II, any memorial or monument to those who have fought for this great land to be cast aside. That's my guarantee to each and every one of you.
Wonderful. All right, thank you, gentlemen. I tell you what, let's do this. Let's go to one of the rapid fire questions that has come in via the chat. This is a good one here. Cindy in Longview sent this question in. She wants to know, and we'll roll it in order. So we'll go Chad, you're next, and then Alan, and then Don. And here's the question. Cindy wants to know, do you support reducing the property tax or abolishing it? And keep the answer super short, short answer if you can do it.
Absolutely, of course. And I would say that not only do we all believe in reducing, but we also believe in abolishing. However much time that's going to take, it's going to do that. I believe it's not only a legal obligation, it's a patriotic obligation, it's a moral obligation. You know, whenever the Old Testament, whenever God gave his people a promise, he said it's going to be a land and it'll never be taxed, because I want it to be the inheritance to your children and your children's children. And I have to believe that if the Israelites of 5,000-6,000 years ago could figure out a way to get around property taxes and still own their land, that we here in 21st century Texas should be able to do the same. We have got to put the best Texas minds, economists, thinkers, people who are fiscal conservatives in charge of this, with the one direct goal of making sure that property taxes are immediately reduced, eliminated for veterans and our people of a certain age, and also with the goal of making sure that they are eliminated completely while maintaining a state legacy of no income tax. And we've got to do it as fast as we possibly can with surgical care, but it must be dealt with.
Super. And same question to you, Alan.
Sure. Without a doubt, what we need to do is look at the budget for the state of Texas, find the redundancies, inefficient programs, ineffective programs, and we need to find those savings and make sure we use that to pay down the property tax relief for the citizens of Texas. Simultaneously, we need to be looking at transitioning off of the current property tax system that we have, 6th highest in the nation, and also based upon Marxist ideological philosophies. Texans need to be able to own their home, and that's what we need to transition to. I believe that we need to look at how we did taxation prior to 1917 when we introduced the personal income tax, and that was a consumption-based tax. And again, I think that we can find the right type of economic minds to make sure that we have a successful transition to a consumption-based tax here in Texas, not a state income tax, and we will put that before the people to vote upon.
Super, thank you. And same question to you, Don.
Well, this is an issue that I've been working on for a long time. It's a priority of the Republican Party. This is a terrible way to fund government. Texans are tired of renting their property and their houses from the government. We're essentially serfs to the government. I've got a clear plan to eliminate property taxes. It's going to take about 8 years to phase it out. We're going to keep local governments fully funded, and we're going to make sure there's a constitutional amendment so you're going to get to vote on it. And we're never going to have an income tax. This is very doable. I know it sounds like political rhetoric, but it's not. This is a math problem. And the best way we're going to do it is to take 90% of the government, the state revenue that increases about 8% annually, and we're going to use that to buy down property taxes. We're going to shift some of it over to sales tax. This is going to create incredible wealth in this state, incredible prosperity. It's not even comprehensible. We think our numbers right now show $80 billion overnight. And half this tax is paid by businesses and half's paid by residents. And it's a terrible way to fund government. We're going to get this done. It's one of my #1 legislative priorities.
Okay, fantastic. All right, gentlemen, let's get to one. This will be a 2-minute answer a piece on this, and this is going to deal with the issue of sovereignty in federal courts. We've gotten a ton of questions about statements that each of you have made about ignoring or challenging the federal government. We've seen issues relating to states pushing back against the federal government typically end up in federal courts, only to see those same courts side against the states and the people in direct violation of the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and Article 1, Section 1 of the Texas Constitution. In concrete terms, we'll start with Alan on this one. In concrete terms, as governor, how do you intend to directly stand against the federal government in these instances? And are you willing to admit that standing up for Texas and staying in the Union could be mutually exclusive?
Well, I think that right now people are looking for state governors that will stand up to the federal government. Again, we have seen a federal government, this Biden administration has completely abdicated its constitutional duty and responsibility. If you want to talk about high crimes and misdemeanors, look at the federal government, a Biden administration that has said we will not protect the sovereignty of the United States of America. We will not protect the sovereignty of a state that has a 1,254-mile border. So we're going to stand on the Constitution. And we are not going to sit back and allow this onerous, intrusive government to just overrun us. When you look at the fact that I responded, and I think you know what I did, Dan, when we had the federal government, the Supreme Court, as a matter of fact, refused to hear the case that Texas and about 16 or 17 other states brought forward in the court of original jurisdiction to petition their government for redress of grievances for the unconstitutional actions that occurred in 5 battleground states in the November 2020 election. And the Supreme Court refused to hear the case. And I said that perhaps now is a time for, constitutional strong states to form a union to make sure that they push back against this type of disregard of state sovereignty and states' rights. Because what those states did in changing their election law, not through the legislatures, but through governors, through secretaries of state, and through judicial activism, had a detrimental effect on a state like Texas today. And that's what you see happening on our border. You think about HB 97, which was recently passed in the Texas state legislature, signed into law, that says that if you have a weapon that is a suppressed weapon that is manufactured here in Texas, you can sell it to citizens here in Texas. That is within the rights of the state, according to the Commerce Clause, which says that the federal government only gets involved if the states with commerce between other states, with other foreign nations, or with the Indian nations. And so I will stand up fervently, as I said in the statement. I will arrest any ATF agent that tries to arrest an FFL or a manufacturer here in Texas that is doing exactly what Texas state law says, which is within our constitutional rights. That is not an enumerated power that goes to the federal government. So I think it is time for us to confound and confuse the federal government and make sure that they understand that sovereign states, as I said in my opening comments, free and independent states created these United States of America. And if ever the federal government tries to push itself against a sovereign state like the state of Texas, then we will take it to the next level.
Super. Thank you. And same question you, Senator Huffines.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm telling you, I'm going to be Biden's worst nightmare. I'm going to prove how sovereign Texas can be. For instance, I'm never going to ask permission from the federal government to secure the Texas border. It's not necessary. This is our border. For instance, I'm going to get prayer back in the schools and in every classroom. I'm not worried about a lawsuit. Let me tell you, there's 3 branches to government, of course, the federal government, the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. Judicial branch doesn't enforce the law. All they do is try to figure out what the Constitution says with a bunch of liberal judges or what the legislature's intent was. And so my goal is to make sure that we ignore federal mandates from these out of control courts and these out of control liberal justices. And we'll let them come down here and try to enforce prayer in the school. I'm not worried about that. What are they going to send? A prayer police down to our campuses? I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about the federal government. I'm worried about what's best for Texans in Texas. And I'm going to prove what it means to be sovereign. And whether it's on the border or any other issue, I'm going to make sure we're going to stand up to the federal government, whether we use the Constitution or not. We're past time of discussing all this. We're going to make sure Texas is sovereign.
Super. And same question to you, Chad.
Baron de Montesquieu was quoted by our founding fathers almost like Jesus in red letters over and over. And one of his theories when it came to a republic was that when you have a landmass that becomes too large, it's impossible to control that and to govern it properly with a centralized government. Hence the reason we have states, and those states are to have sovereignty. The states are to keep accountability with the federal government, and the federal government is to work in conjunction with the rights of those states and their freedoms and to honor them. Now, we know right now that Texas has a target on her back. Washington, D.C. realizes that Texas is the last bastion of freedom with the will, the population, the people, the drive, the economy, just the sheer force that can put D.C. and the federal government back on track, but it's not a track they want to be on. So they want us to fall. They want us to fail. They want us to become blue. That's why you'll see about $90 million poured into a Robert Francis O'Rourke campaign if he makes it to a general election on the Democrat ticket. Why? Because the money's going to come from Silicon Valley, California, Hollywood, New York, all of these various places. They want Texas to fail. Now, imagine, if you will, you are living in first century Israel, the times of Jesus. And that Roman Empire, which again started out as a republic, but it got so big, as Montesquieu said, they couldn't govern it. So they had to become a dictatorship, a monarchy. They became an empire. And as you know, Israel fell under the boot of Rome. Jesus himself said, if one compels you to go a mile, walk with him too. Why? Because the Roman government had the right to tell you what to do, make you do things that were against your freedom and your rights. We're slowly but steadily coming into a spiral downward of destruction where the federal government is telling us what to do because the states have lost their rights. It is up to us, Texas, to be the determiner of our destiny. We know our history, as I stated before, but what is our future? Only to the degree that we can determine what that future looks like. Only to the degree that we can determine our destiny, our legislation, our purpose, our identity, and our rights and our freedoms. Because Washington, D.C. is not coming to our aid in any way, shape, or form. We must fight. 100%, we must fight because we're seeing a monarchy, a tyranny, an empire that's being brought forward and accepted in America. And its name is Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
To that, I say Texas says no.
Hey, thank you, Chad. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you guys off, but, we're tight on time because we did not schedule it for an hour and a half, just 1 hour. So, we're going to be a little tight, but I appreciate you guys staying in the wheelhouse. All right. Look, Don, this one goes to you, and then we're going to have to do some lightning round ones after this to make up for some time. But here's the question. One of the biggest criticisms of actions taken in the wake of the COVID outbreak was the unprecedented closures of businesses, schools, and churches by the office of the governor. Citing emergency powers ceded to the office by the legislature, these edicts upended the Texas economy, and it still hasn't fully recovered. After numerous lawsuits, protests, and outright civil disobedience, the edicts have been largely lifted. Some critics, including the TNM, have pointed out that government by decree is antithetical to a constitutional republic. As governor, what measures would you support to ensure that our Republican form of government is preserved and Texans never have to submit to autocratic rule again?
Well, there's a bill submitted in the legislature this session that didn't even really move very far at all, and that is to take away and to limit the powers of the governor for what you're just saying. And I'm all for that. Now, I think we can get that done and get it passed to limit it for an emergencies for a time frame of, say, no more than 30 days until you have to go to the legislature. This was the issue and the catalyst for me to run for governor. When Abbott shut down our state and put 3 million Texans out of work in one day. That's more jobs than we've created in the last 15 years combined. I mean, he unilaterally destroyed tens of thousands of businesses, closed our churches, and he did it over the holiest season of the year, Easter. Makes us wear a mask mandate for 9 months, and then people thank him for taking it off. That's like thanking a thief for bringing some of your stolen goods back. Look, I never would have done any of that. The Constitution doesn't give me the authority to do that. I'm the one that wrote the op-ed that most of the papers picked up, begging Abbott to open back up. And I tell you this, I will never let anyone be forced to take a vaccine for any reason if they don't want to take it. If you want to take it 10 times. I don't care. I'm never gonna let anybody forcibly take a vaccine. I've never taken it, and I never will. I'm not going to make anybody wear a mask either or let that happen. I'm never going to close our schools, our churches, or any other issue. And we've lost more liberty in the last 18 months in this state than I ever thought would happen in my life. It's incredible. They've closed our businesses, our churches. They forcibly stick potential poison in your body. And this is all this is done by a Republican governor of Texas. It's never going to happen in a Huffines administration.
Thank you, Don. Okay, Chad, same question.
You know, I got into this race over mandates. I was the first one into this primary race. I announced on Twitter, although unofficial, it was very much serious on July 2nd, 2020. I was in South Dakota. I was waiting on President Trump to come speak at Mount Rushmore in that historic event for the 4th of July. And I was in that land of Christy Noem, a place that was not shut down, a place that was not mandated, a place that wasn't dictated to, when my phone went off and I received a news notification saying that Greg Abbott, our Republican governor, quote unquote, had issued another mandate that was determining who was essential and who was non-essential. And I went and I announced that I was going to run. And again, we could probably arguably count about a dozen constitutional violations that have happened in the last 18 months that were unilaterally and dictatorially handed down without legislation from this governor. Texans have lost their freedom. Bottom line, Texans have lost their freedom. We can list them off. But at the end of the day, folks, I don't know everything there is to know about COVID or the coronavirus, and neither do the supposed experts, because they keep changing their mind day in and day out. But I have read the Constitution, both the U.S. and the Texas Constitution. And what I know is that the Constitution was not written to keep you safe or to keep you healthy. It was written to keep you free. And so we have got to make sure that Texas remains free. It remains industrious. It remains wealthy. It remains prosperous. The entrepreneurial spirit and that work ethic of Texas is protected so that we don't rely on Washington, D.C. or Silicon Valley, which is exactly what this governor has done. People are hurting. There are still legal battles that are happening over shutdowns, mandates, not the least of which was by that third largest Gestapo law enforcement agency, which is the nonsensical TABC, which was there to enforce in a dictatorial manner this dictator governor. So we've got to fight this. We know that DC has a target. It's up to Texans. It's up to us to make sure that we come to each other's aid. We didn't have to get mandated to come to each other's aid when Hurricane Harvey hit. We just loaded up our trucks and we rolled south. We knew that. And that's what's got to happen in this case as well.
Super. Thank you so much, Chad. And now to you, Colonel West. Same question.
Sure. No elected official has the enumerated power to decide who or what is essential in Texas or the United States of America. Benjamin Franklin said, "Those who would surrender essential liberty for temporary security in the end deserve neither liberty nor security." You're looking at the one person that is chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. I brought forth a 9th legislative priority before the State Republican Executive Committee to deal with executive overreach. And one of the things that I did as the chairman, I took on Governor Abbott. As a matter of fact, I signed on to a lawsuit against Governor Abbott when he unilaterally decided to go and change Texas election law from 2 weeks of early voting to 3 weeks of early voting. When he decided that he could appropriate Texas taxpayer dollars to the tune of about $290 million for a non-compete bid to a private sector organization called MTX Corporation so that they could do contact tracing. See, those are legislative duties and responsibilities, the appropriations of dollars, changing or amending law. And we cannot have this constitutional monarch, because here in Texas, here in the United States of America, edicts, orders, mandates, and decrees are how you rule over people. If you don't want to follow the Texas state constitution, which says after 30 days, you're supposed to bring back the legislature, regardless of what you have said is an emergency, you have to do that after 30 days. This governor did not do that. So he has been in violation of the Texas state constitution. And if we had that provision in the Texas state constitution, he could be brought up on impeachment charges, because that's exactly what he did. So I think that as a person that took an oath to the Constitution of the United States of America on 31 July 1982, I understand the 3 branches of government. I understand the roles and responsibilities thereof. And I am not going to try to make myself a constitutional monarch. I'm not going to rule over the people of Texas by edicts, orders, mandates, and decrees. Everything that we do will be done through the legislative process. And if need be, we will call a special session. Like I wish we will have a 4th special session right now to deal with the fact that we have got to make sure that these vaccine mandates, these mandates that we are forcing Texans to take under the condition of losing employment, but yet the hundreds of thousands of people coming across our border are not being mandated to do so.
Fantastic. Super. And gentlemen, thank you all 3 for your answers there. All right, so here we go. You all knew it was coming. So here is obviously the number one question that has been submitted, and we start with you, Chad. Each of you has been asked numerous times at various events, forums, and town halls about your stance on Texas, an issue that is the number one priority for our members and supporters, and supported by a majority of Texas Republicans, half of independent voters, and even 1/3 of Texas Democrats. To make sure that everyone is absolutely crystal clear on your stance, first, will you support legislation that would give Texans an up or down vote on becoming a self-governing independent nation? And if so, if the people choose Texas over remaining in the Union, will you respect the decision of the people and do everything within the powers of the office of the governor to implement their will? Chad, you're first.
At the end of the day, anyone who sits in an elected office is operating from a position, sitting in a chair of delegated authority. The delegated authority comes from the people who placed them there through a democratic act. This is the thing that we honor. This is the thing that we believe is sacred. This is the thing that keeps us free. I am the only one who has consistently said that not only do I support this type of legislation, but I advocate for it. I push for it. And the reason is because of what I've stated earlier, that Washington, D.C. has a target on our back. The only way that we can hold their feet to the fire and leverage ourselves against them to put them back on track is by making sure that they understand that we are the masters of our own destiny. Now, there's nothing more sacred than the idea of being a United States. This idea that our founders have given us is sacred. But at the end of the day, we're not united in many, many ways. And we know that we're under attack. So I would advocate not only for that being on the ballot to the degree that the people of Texas want it on the ballot, because they're the ones who determined that. And if it were passed in a general election by the people of Texas, and that was their priority, I would not veto that, but I would ratify that regardless of the consequences and make sure that Washington, D.C. understands that we are not only Texas, but we are, by God, Texas.
Super. Thank you very much. And same question to you, Colonel West.
Well, sure, Dan, you know that while I was the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, I was on the Chris Salcedo show, Newsmax TV, asked about HB 1359, presented by State Representative Kyle Biederman. And I said, absolutely, I'll support HB 1359, which would have been the opportunity for people to have this to vote on. And I continue to speak out about the right of the people to be able to vote on the fact that they need to be able to determine the sovereignty of the state of Texas. And as the representative, as a governor serving the people of Texas, if that's what they vote to have, and I've already signed a petition to make sure that that gets on the Republican primary ballot, of course, you're going to implement it. And as I have said, the United States of America is very sacred and near and dear to me. My father served as a corporal in a segregated army in World War II. My older brother served in combat in Vietnam, wounded there. I served 22 years to the United States Army. And now my nephew is serving as a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, 3 combat tours of duty and waiting on battalion command lists. So when we took that oath and we took it to heart that we were willing to lay down our lives for it. But I will tell you, I understand the sovereignty of states. As I said earlier, states need to step up and they need to challenge this federal government. And if this federal government were to ever to take some of the actions already that we have seen, the usurpations of King George III, then we need to be prepared to go a different direction. But we must first and foremost let the federal government know clearly that the Constitution is a restraining document on them. It's sort of an empowering document for the states and the people. And that's going to be my first line of defense. But I'm always going to have that trump card ready. And that trump card is to make sure that we can say Texas will not tolerate an onerous and intrusive federal government.
Super. Thank you so much. And back to you, Senator Huffines. Same question.
Well, I too have signed the petition that's going around to put it on the Republican ballot. And yes, I would support the legislation. And yes, if it gets out, we'll make sure that that we get it done. Being sovereign is everything about my campaign. That's what my campaign's about. It's also about courageous leadership. And if we got courageous leadership with the governor of Texas, I'm not sure how much energy we're going to have to be with Texas. Just give me 2 years as your governor, and I can tell you I'm going to prove what it means for Texas to be sovereign. With courageous leadership, that's what it's all about. It's leadership and no excuses. And I will make sure that Texas doesn't take orders from the federal government. I understand the 3 branches of government, and I'm not worried about the lawsuits. I'm worried about Texas.
All right, super. All right, well, gentlemen, here we are. It is about that time to wrap up, and I'll tell you, we had lots more questions submitted. And for those of you out there that are watching and participating tonight, some of the questions were touched on in some of the answers to the other questions, such as vaccine mandates. I'd heard at least one passing mention on education, obviously energy independence and agriculture, all big concerns. And because we did not get to them tonight, I would just encourage people to reach out to the campaigns and visit with these folks on the road, have that conversation with them, ask them in the town halls. Just because we didn't get to it tonight doesn't mean that it's not important. It doesn't mean that they don't have a stance or position on these particular issues. On these issues, I have had an opportunity to visit with all 3 of these gentlemen across all of the issues, and I can assure you they all 3 have positions, answers, and stances on these. With that being said, because we are in the remaining minutes of this in the wind down, we're going to go ahead and get the closing statements in. You guys have 3 minutes apiece to make your final case, and be sure to tell people where they can connect with your campaign. And we'll start with you, Colonel West.
Well, again, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Dan, for having us here. And thank you to the Texas Nationalist Movement. Without a doubt, the 2 preeminent issues that we face here in the great state of Texas is protecting our sovereignty. When you have a federal government that has abdicated their constitutional duty, as it says in Article 4, Section 4, in the Guarantee Clause, to protect our state from an invasion. And when you go down and you walk with Brad Coe, the sheriff of Kinney County in Brackettville, Brad Coe has 1,400 square miles in Kinney County, right there next to Val Verde County, Del Rio. He has 16 miles that runs along the Rio Grande River. He has 6 sheriff's deputies. 6 sheriff's deputies cannot stay awake 24/7, 365. And when I was down with him just last week, after we had our forum in Wise County in Decatur, we went out to the bushes. There's no one on the ground. That's not how you protect the sovereignty of the state of Texas. We can look at all the other issues, but if we don't make sure that Texas is protected, then we don't have a Texas. And I've been on many different borders from Iraq, Kuwait, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, from being back there between West Berlin and East Berlin, Turkey, Bulgarian border. I understand border security. I understand how to secure a border. I understand task and purpose. I understand rules of engagement. We should not have our men and women down there on that border, and they are receiving fire from a transnational narco-criminal terrorist organization. We're fighting an insurgency, and you need to have a warrior that understands how to fight an insurgency. But the other thing we have to be concerned about is one word, and that is freedom. That's the basis of the United States of America. When I think about the person that is sitting up there in the Oval Office right now, I think about 2 statements that he has made in this year. One statement is that no constitutional amendment is absolute. Every constitutional amendment is absolute, especially the first 10 that start with your freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, right to petition your government for redress of grievances, your Second Amendment rights down to that 10th Amendment. And the other thing that Joe Biden said was, this is not about your freedom. When he said that each and every one of us have to, against our own will, be injected with something that we may not agree with. This is why I want to be in the position to lead the greatest state in the union, to show everyone that we can stand strong. Texas does not have to go down the path of California. But yet, when you look at what just happened last week, Tuesday, in the capital city of Texas, Austin, Texas, where they voted down Proposition A, which said that they did not want to refund their police, that they're, I guess, content with having a 71% increase in homicides, 66% increase in violent crimes, the homeless situation. Elon Musk even tweeted out to the people of Austin, do not let Austin become an example of San Francisco. We've got to fight here in Texas. And I will tell you that the future of the United States of America will not be determined in Capitol Hill. The future of the United States of America will be determined in the Lone Star State. And that's why, westfortexas.com, I would love to be your next governor. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Colonel. And now over to Senator Huffines.
Thank you. Well, Patriots, imagine a Texas where the border is completely secure, where you don't have to worry about the cartels and sex trafficking and human trafficking and the fentanyl pouring across our borders. Imagine the border where you don't have to worry about illegals flooding our education system and costing us billions and billions of dollars a year and taking your seats for your children at our universities. Imagine that we stop the magnets in Texas that are keeping the illegals here. We can get E-Verify done in my administration. We're going to get them out of our education system and our government schools, where there's about 400,000 currently residing. Imagine a Texas where you don't have to rent your home from the government or your business or your land or your farm or your ranch, that you can actually own your own home. That's what you're going to get in a Huffines administration. Imagine a Texas where you can have confidence that your votes aren't being stolen. I'm going to create a law enforcement division of up to 500 officers in it. And all they're going to be focused on is really election integrity and election fraud. So you can have someone you can call when you think government's corrupt, and there's a lot of it, and when you think elections are corrupt. You need that. We need to make sure that we have confidence in our election course. It's the foundation of our constitutional republic. I'm going to prove not just to the United States what it means to be sovereign. I'm going to prove it to the whole world what it means for Texas to be sovereign. You know, the word Texas, it used to have a special meaning. It used to mean something, but we've lost that. And the Huffines administration, Texas is going to get its swagger back. My administration is not going to just be a new chapter in Texas history. It's going to be a new book in Texas history. Our greatest days are coming. Our greatest days are yet to dawn. Join me. Join me in this revolution of ideas, and the only ammunition we need is our love of Texas. Go to donhuffines.com. donhuffines.com. I'm not in this. There's a path to win, and I'm on the path to victory. I'm not in this to send a political message. I'm in this to win. We've opened 15 field offices across the state of Texas. We're raising millions of dollars. We're in this to win so we can save Texas, and maybe we can save the United States of America. God bless you, and God bless Texas.
Thank you, Don. And now to you, Chad.
Daniel, thank you, man. You know, I always tell you that you are my favorite modern revolutionary, and I appreciate you. I do. And I appreciate the Texas Nationalist Movement. I appreciate how long you've been in this fight and everything that you have invested in it. And I know that it is a noble cause. I also want to say thank you and God bless to my friends that I pray for every day, Don Huffines and Alan West. I've known these gentlemen for a while. We have spent time together, and I know their heart. I know their passion. And I know that they, like me, start from a place of freedom and liberty and patriotism. And I have no doubt in that regard. I'm the only guy who's coming at this thing without a political background. I've never been elected to any office. Now, some people would see that as a detriment. Me personally, I see that as a favorable thing. I know what it's like to be a hardworking blue-collar guy that pulls himself up by the bootstraps, goes out there and makes a living in an entrepreneurial and incredibly vanguard way. It's an adventure. It really is. But the beauty of it is I was able to plant this seed of my life in the great state of Texas, and it has helped me to flourish. So to say that is to say that I love this state. I really do. I have no reason other than my love and conviction for how great this state is to be in this, to be spending time with you gentlemen and talking to the folks who are watching this tonight, other than the fact that I love this state. There is something about this place that no other state possesses. People have asked me over and over again why Texas isn't more like South Dakota or more like Florida. And I just say there's nothing like Texas. And if you're here and you get it, then you understand it.
We have got to protect that legacy. We really do. And once you understand that, you know that it's worth fighting for, because at the end of the day, we are that last place. We are embattled. We are being invaded. We have pressure from inside and outside. But it's going to take somebody with common sense, somebody who looks at this from a non-political perspective, quite honestly, and says it's time to implement common sense. I believe that those words were echoed in our first president here in the Republic of Texas, Sam Houston, who said, govern wisely and as little as possible. Politics sucks, quite honestly. It sucks. And having seen the seedy underbelly that I've seen, and these gentlemen have seen as well, you can't look away from it. It's very, very ugly. It's time that, as our fathers of old had a Boston Tea Party, that we have an Austin Tea Party, because I don't believe that we're being represented by people in Travis County who truly understand the great spirit and independence of Texas anymore. We are being governed, dictated to, if you will, by a blob that touches everything that it can and consumes it and only grows larger. And it's mirroring Washington, D.C. It's taken your rights. It's taken your freedoms. It has taken everything that you hold dear. And within 10 years, Texas will be another California. It's time for somebody to be honest. Time for somebody to be real. Time for someone who understands that you can't solve complex problems and still be politically correct. I pray that you'll visit me at prather2022.com. Take a look at what we're doing. It's not anything that is going to be stereotypical. It's not going to be anything that is going to be politics as usual. And I pray that you'll understand that. And whether you vote for Don or you vote for Allen, and I pray that you vote for one of the three over dictator Greg Abbott, I pray that beyond anything, this primary season will light a new fire for you about the state of Texas, and that spirit will be alive in your soul.
Super. Thank you so much, Chad. And look, let me just go ahead right now while everyone is here and just thank you three for participating in this virtual town hall. This was the opportunity for all of our folks in the TNM to see you guys. And while I am ready to be back to normal and doing in-person events again, we just have so many people from Dalhart to Del Rio and El Paso to Orange that wanted to take the time to visit with you guys on the issues that our organization find so important. And I want to thank you guys for taking the time tonight to unpack those issues. I wish we would have had more time to cover so many more of these phenomenal questions. But it is what it is. And we got a lot of daylight between here and the primaries. So I would just encourage those of you out there to get out there and visit these guys, see them out on the campaign trail, go to their websites, learn more about them. And what you're going to find is that it's about doggone time Texas had options. And I'm pretty sure that everyone would agree. So with that, gentlemen, thank you again. And I will go ahead and wrap up tonight's virtual town hall by reminding everyone that is watching, if you'd like to find out more about the Texas Nationalist Movement, you can visit our website at tnm.me. That is tnm.me. If you'd like to find out about our petition campaign, you can check it out at tnm.me/petition. Or if you'd like to become a member, you can go to tnm.me/join. If you believe in the political, cultural, and economic independence of the nation of Texas, and you believe that there needs to be an organization out there that secures and protects a constitutional republic and the inherent rights of the people of Texas, then we invite you with open arms. And so as we wrap up, I will leave you with the words I leave everyone with every time I do a live stream, and it is this. It was Sam Houston who said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now, and the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.
Well, the people in power, whether red or blue, they could not care less about Texas, me and you. They created this give me country that don't value hard work. For a Texan to survive, all we need are some seeds and dirt. Texas in a rise. Don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it's long gone. Texas in a rise. Don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it's long gone. We believe in family and we value our community. Gladly lend a helping hand to a neighbor in need. And we don't believe that government should provide for all of society's needs. No, it's the pride of a Texan to give to others voluntarily. Texas in a rise. Don't you hear your call? Gotta save your country before it's long gone. Texas in a rise. Don't you hear your call? Gotta save your country before it's long gone. Our tax dollars and they love our natural resources. They don't want to see us driving trucks, they'd rather see us riding horses. And now they want to ban our guns, you know, especially the ones that look scary. But may I remind you of the Gonzales Cannon and the Alamo heroes we buried. Texas in a rise. Don't you hear your call? Got to save our country before it's long gone. Texas in a rise. Don't you hear your call? Got to save our country before it's long gone. This last verse is straight from the Texas Constitution, Article 1, Section 1 and 2. Look it up. Texas is an independent state, yet presently we suffer. We no longer possess the right to locally self-govern. And now it's time as a people in which all political power is inherent. And in such manner we find expedient, we reform or abolish our government. I said, Texas in a rise. Don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it